Hi, welcome to our SCORE podcast in partnership with the Better Business Bureau of Minnesota, where we try to be knowledgeable, informative, and inspirational to our local community of business owners and business community. I am your host, Brent Lundell, and I am the Associate Director for Minnesota for SCORE. SCORE is a national nonprofit organization with over 12,000 volunteers across the country. In Minnesota, we have a number of chapters that contribute to the local business community, and nationwide, we have over 200 chapters across the country. SCORE aims to strengthen the small business owner along with the surrounding communities that it serves. SCORE does a number of things in the business community. We have monthly workshops that we offer in person via Zoom. The Twin Cities market has over 200 workshops in a year. We have a number of resources on our digital format in our digital library. For example, a person can look at our digital library and they can download a business plan. They can look to get counseling on how to negotiate a lease. They can find some information on how to do projections. And so our digital format on our resource library is informative to the community and to the businesses that it serves. We are fortunate to have this podcast in partnership with the Better Business Bureau of Minnesota. And I'd like to take a couple seconds here to thank our sponsors on this podcast. We have Cheyenne Vernus from Triton Commerce, who is the Director of Marketing and Strategy. And we have Brian Brock from Franson Bank and Trust. Without their support and the Better Business Bureau, this wouldn't be possible. So we're very thankful for the opportunity to educate the community and certainly educate the business owners that we're looking to serve. Now, if you're looking for a template, let's say you're talking to a banker, maybe a CPA, or even a SCORE mentor, and you're looking for projections. You have to do 2 to 3 year projections on your business. There's a number of resources here you can look at. So if I click on templates and resources, and I click on template gallery, it will then take me to just an array of these different templates that are available for you, really at no cost. So you can click on the template and you can scroll down to see what is included in the template, things you may want to include in there, give you some ideas of what it is. But then also you can actually download the template and start working on that in a live form. And this particular site for the resources, there is a large variety of things for you to look at. I will often get questions on bank financing or finance templates, and we've created some of these templates that we use in SCORE here, and they're really a viable resource for anyone who's in business that is just looking for other resources, maybe a different format to look at things. Some of the other things that we offer in the Twin Cities are these local workshops. And local workshops, a lot of these are free at no cost. Some have a small fee if they're doing a lunch or something like that. But these events, we really try to look out the next 3-4 months ahead on what's coming up on the calendar. And then you can really just go on to the site at your leisure and click on the event and get your registration in. And so these are available for anyone who wants to stop in, anyone who wants to view these online. They're typically very well attended, and they're led by our volunteer base of SCORE mentors. What is a SCORE mentor? A SCORE mentor typically is someone who has some business experience and is willing to volunteer their time. And so when you click on local mentors, it will give you some options here on what you're looking for in terms of industries. Maybe you're looking at geographically where the mentor is located, but it'll give you a wide variety here of different mentors to scroll through. And once you've selected a mentor, or you may not know which mentor you want, we have an intake person that can go over that along with trying to match you up to the best mentor for your industry, but also try to match you up for the best overall fit. And so once you've been designated a mentor, typically that mentor then will reach out to you and you guys can begin your sessions of either meeting over Zoom, meeting in person, or even a combination of both. And so the mentors are a vital component to SCORE. And SCORE is funded by the SBA side of the federal government. We appreciate their partnership and what we're doing out there. And if for those of you that are interested in maybe becoming a SCORE mentor, you can always come over here and navigate to the volunteer tab. And you can really put your name in the hat here on what you're looking for. And I think once you start volunteering as a SCORE mentor, you'll find that it's very rewarding and you can, in essence, give something back here to the community. I would encourage everyone who is watching this and listening to this that we do have a number of recorded webinars. And so if you're looking for a particular webinar on maybe it's finance, maybe it's transition from W-2 employee to employer, almost all of our webinars are recorded and they're archived into this various spot. And you can literally, once you register, you can view the recorded webinar. And so there are hundreds of webinars recorded on here. And again, these recorded webinars are no charge. You can simply register for these and listen and look through them at your leisure. You know, finally, I would encourage you to look through this site and find some things in here that may make some sense to review. One of these things I would encourage you to look at is under the About tab, you can click on some success stories. And these typically are some case studies, success stories where someone's willing to interview with us on how they took their business from A to Z. And you can kind of read through and build up some case studies and confidence on what you're looking for. Again, this is the Twin Cities SCORE site. It's score.org/Twin Cities. And thank you, and we'll follow up soon. Welcome back. Our topic is how it was built. And today we have the fortune of talking with Scott Hislop, the CEO of Transworld, Minnesota. And Scott's company is in the mergers and acquisitions industry, along with the business brokerage industry. Scott, thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Brent. It's great to be here. So we're certainly big fans of SCORE and the Better Business Bureau for sure.
Well, we appreciate it. Scott, you have quite the unique background of how you got into business brokerage. Give us that story a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a sixth-generation farmer, actually. I have a grandson who will be Generation 8 for our family, started in 1866. But my son took operations over of our farm about 9 years ago and was looking for a company to buy at that time and just wasn't finding a company to service my needs, looking for something to buy. And at the time I thought if somebody else would come into this space and do it a little bit differently. Typically other brokerage firms I met with, every individual agent worked in a silo. And so we do that differently and work as a team at Transworld North Star. And we have a lot of talents from a lot of different advisors and a lot of different industries. And using those collectively on a weekly basis to solve issues has been a good thing for us.
So, Scott, you guys currently are in Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin. Is that correct?
We are. Yeah, so Transworld is a franchise. I own the franchise for Minnesota and now Iowa and recently Wisconsin. We are in 48 states and 16 countries. So there's 850 advisors across our network. And so we're one of the larger low to mid-market brokerage companies.
Okay. From a 30,000 square foot view on business brokerage or M&A advising, how do you explain that to someone who's had their business for 10 years on why they might hire you for your services?
Lots of reasons there. First, everyone on our team is passionate about entrepreneurs and passionate about helping business owners get value, extract value for their business. Next to marriage and children, selling and buying a business is probably one of the bigger things in someone's life. And so recognizing that, it's a very highly emotional process. And so using someone like us will help the owner stay focused on the business, continue to have revenues increase and KPIs increase, and let us do the heavy lifting on the sale process.
What are some of the challenges that a current business owner in 2023 has that maybe weren't as prominent 3 or 4 years ago?
Certainly employees are a big issue since COVID. Everyone, just about in every industry across the board, is short of employees and short-staffed and have a hard time filling all the positions. So the companies that have been able to pivot and adapt and adjust accordingly are going to be the winners. But that's probably the biggest reason people are coming to us today looking to sell is that chronic issue of being short-staffed all the time.
Sure. And when you're looking to sell a business, how do you go about advertising that if it's presumed confidential listing out there?
Yeah. So it depends on the level of the business and kind of the level of confidentiality we need. Now, if it's a retail business, a Main Street business, and there's a lot of them, we can be pretty generic, and it's not quite as difficult. But if it's a business where there's only one, maybe in the 5-state area, it's much more difficult. So we don't refer to an area necessarily. We say this business in the U.S.
Sure.
And keep the area and keep the genericness about the business to the level that it needs. So.
What are some challenges you have dealing with sellers who are ingrained into their business, but they may not be the most respondent on trying to sell their business?
Everyone has the right to change their mind, right? So, sellers will have a bad day. We'll meet with them. They'll say, "Yep, I'm ready to go," and the next week they have their best week ever in the business, and they're maybe not ready to sell their business at that point. So, dealing with sellers' remorse in those ups and downs in their decision-making process is expected on our part.
Sure.
And helping them through that. So,
what is the average timeline of selling a business? So, if I'm in manufacturing and I have this fantastic business I've had for 20 years.
Yeah.
And now I'm thinking about selling this business. What are the processes you have for valuing that business? Maybe some of the red flags you see on the financials. And then what is the end result in terms of months, years it takes to really transition someone out?
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I'm a big fan of SCORE because you're telling your mentors that you meet with now, it's start thinking about selling your business the day that you buy it, right, or the day that you start it. Mm-hmm. Start with the end in mind. And everyone that we work with, fortunately, hasn't done that. But the more lead time you can have to prepare the business for sale, consistent financials, consistent chart of accounts, processes documented, and those kinds of things will bring you more value at the time. But from the time that we engage with the business owner, on average, it takes between 9 and 13 months for us to get the sale done.
Okay. And when you look at the number of businesses in Minnesota, for example, I think that number is 150,000 plus around here. Mm-hmm. How do you guys target or find representation for businesses you're looking to sell?
On a weekly basis, company-wide, we have about 2,500 buyer inquiries a week. People are looking for businesses from A to Z in all different sectors. There's a lot of companies that are looking to bolt on a company to make them more recession-proof. And so, we have that. And today we probably have a higher number of people coming out of corporate America who are answering to a board of directors that don't want to do that anymore and want to buy their own business and create their own destiny. So there's a lot of demand today on the buy side, which you might find surprising. But then, the sell side too, we're expecting 2024 to be have a high number, because I think there was some hesitancy in 2023 to make the decision to sell, thinking that this maybe isn't the best time with interest rates like they are and the unknown, with the economy.
Sure.
But we're expecting 2024 to be a very large volume.
Sure.
So,
I'm a banker by trade during the day, and I can speak to what interest rates are in my world. How have the interest rates affected how you guys determine timeline for exit, maybe quality of buyer, liquidity? How do you guys put that into focus with the seller?
It's math, right? It has to make financial sense for a buyer, regardless if you're a strategic buyer or a financial buyer. It has to make financial sense, so it has to work. So we've probably increased the amount of seller financing. We've increased the amount of earnouts this last year since interest rates have risen. But it has to work at the end of the day to make financial sense for the buyer.
Sure. Every time in the news you hear about the baby boomers boom, or people slowly exiting their business. Have you reached that peak yet on people leaving or exiting their businesses yet?
That's probably the thing that surprised me the most over the time that I've been in this business, is that getting into it, I'm thinking that we're typically going to be working with 60-plus-year-olds, baby boomers looking to exit. We sold a business, a few weeks ago that the owner's 30 years old, right? And so there's a lot of people that are selling for different reasons.
Sure.
Sometimes people just want to change, and so by far the biggest opportunity that we see going forward are baby boomers owning their businesses, but that doesn't mean that we're not working with others as well. So.
We look at some of the highlights in the news with millennials, different age groups out there. What are some of the volume of age groups that are buying businesses right now?
A to Z. I don't know the youngest. I guess early 20s is probably on the younger
Sure.
side. We're talking with an individual now who is 64 years old. He's bringing in equity partners that were 10 years older than him at 74. And we have the business that we're talking about is over a $100 million company. So
Okay.
you have people like that are young at heart.
Retire when they're 90?
It's not typical, not what you expect, but yeah, that's
Yeah. That's fantastic. So you have to have some fantastic stories of just sellers that were just challenging to work with. Can you share one or two stories about that?
The seller's remorse, again, is the biggest issue that we have, and it's your baby, right? When you built it, when you start something from scratch, and that day is getting closer when you're going to sell, you're going to finalize a deal.
Yep.
It's a heart-wrenching thing for a lot of folks, and so helping them through those emotions is probably the most rewarding thing that we do. And it's a wide range of emotions, from no, I don't want to sell, no, the deal is off,
Yep.
I'm not going to do it, and then the next day, okay, we're going to move forward. So.
Sure. So some of the components you have here on trying to sell a business, being a business broker, you got the business valuation side of it, you got negotiation. Can you speak a little bit to on how, as a business broker, you might value that business in one or two different formats in terms of the saleability of that business?
Yeah, for sure. It's one of the things I think that makes us different than others, too. We have a valuation department where we have two individuals that's what they do. So there's a lot of consistency around the output that we have. It's interesting stat. We just did a compilation, Brian did, who works with us last week, that looking at historically the valuations that we provided compared to the close price. And so our valuations were 12% higher than the close price.
Sure.
And so I'm not sure a lot of other companies know that stat or can have that information to make decisions going forward, right? But we're very big into data and understanding how we can use that going forward to make us better.
Can you speak a little bit to on when someone inquires to buy a business, what are some of the criteria, qualifications that you're trying to illustrate to that prospective buyer?
So a lot of people, like I said, company-wide, we have 2,500 a week, right? So a lot of those are inquiring in their pajamas at night and not
Yep.
really serious, right? So we need to filter that out. Talking about their goals, one of the criteria to be on our team is empathetic listening is one of our core values, and that's probably the biggest thing, most important thing that we do as a business advisor within our company is listen to what the needs and wants and goals are, not only of the buyer but of the seller as well, and how do we come up with creative solutions that accomplish both.
Sure, sure. And when you get to the point of a buyer is somewhat pre-qualified, a buyer has the financial means and maybe the knowledge to do it, explain a little bit on what their due diligence process is as they're going through that with you.
It depends on the size of the business, for sure. The larger the business, the longer that due diligence process is. But essentially, that's a time where everybody wants to be certain that it's the right thing for them, right? So verifying all the financials, all of the processes and systems and contracts they have in place, it's a time to make sure that that's the right business for them.
Sure, sure. How long do most buyers take for that due diligence process as it's under contract?
We've the shortest time is probably a week that we've had, and longest, probably up to 120 days on larger deals.
Sure, sure. Can you give the audience an example of, let's say I'm buying $1 million business. I've qualified with a bank. I pre-qualified with Transworld on buying that business. How might that deal structure look for a prospective buyer, provided financials are there, historical cash flows there, the borrower has enough for a down payment? How does that structure look in terms of on the buyer side?
So we're concerned all the time with cash flow for buyers and working capital. So on every deal structure that we have, we want to be certain that it's sustainable for the buyer going forward. And nothing ever works as planned every time, right? So you need to build in for bumps in the road.
Sure.
And making sure that we don't have the amortization structure too tight. It's lengthened out enough to give adequate working capital for what the buyers need. And then at the end of the day, it needs to make sense for them. So buyers want three things. They want to if they're going to invest cash in the business, they want to return for their cash. If they're going to borrow money for the business, they need to service the debt comfortably. And number three, if they're going to work in the business, they want a decent salary for their time and effort. So if the deal does those three things, we certainly know that we're down the right road and having close to a deal that's going to make sense for them.
Sure, sure. As a business broker and the CEO of Transworld and the team here, when can you exhale when a deal is finally about to close? Is there ever a time?
I don't know if there is or not. Certainly, it's always right up to the very end for sure. So, but then there's post-closing things too that we help with, and there's always issues, and sometimes it's a great relationship between buyer and seller, and sometimes it's not.
Yep.
So that's life, right?
Sure, sure.
And it's our job to try to make that the best that we can, regardless of what the situation is.
Sure. And some of the other services that Transworld does along with your team, you guys do some commercial appraisers, you guys do some business valuations, and maybe some light auditing of financials. Are those basic services that you guys typically do?
We do. I mean, that's not we do that, but it's not something that we advertise, I guess, or necessarily is our focus.
Sure.
More of a strategic planning for folks. There's a lot of companies that, hey, I want to sell my business or company to my son or daughter. How does that work? And oftentimes we get involved in that. There's nothing better for that kind of transition to know that if they involve us and we have a third party that makes an offer on this company, then the son or daughter has the first right of refusal. There's nothing better for that son or daughter to know that, hey, if I wouldn't have bought this business at this price, it would have went to somebody else.
Sure.
So the price I paid for the business was a fair price. And just that alone is a huge thing for families. Otherwise, there's generation after generation thinking, hey, I paid too much or I didn't pay enough for that given business. So.
Do you see a lot of generational businesses that the father, mother had for 20, 30 years, raised their kids on, kids worked in the business? Do you see a percentage of those that get transferred down successfully to the heirs?
We do in different types of transactions there. Some families with larger businesses want to take some chips off the table. So if they have a very large multi-million-dollar business or $50, $75 million business, maybe they don't want all that risk, in their family to remain. So they bring in an outside equity partner to take some chips off the table. Same with some smaller businesses. We've had very successful, smaller businesses, but the pain of growing that business was so great for the founder
Sure.
that said, I don't want my children to go through that same thing that I went through, so I don't want you working in this business, right? So we see that a number of times as well.
Sure. Are there any surprises you've seen the last 7-10 years in terms of how businesses are transferred down?
Every day that I get surprised, Brent. So just funny things happen, there's smaller businesses, for example. I hear this quite often, that I need to sell this for X. I need to sell this for $500,000, otherwise I'm closing the doors. Well, to me, there's a number between 500,000 and zero, right? But it's a principle of the thing that somebody's not going to give it away for something less than that they have in their mind. So that doesn't make logic sense to me, but
Sure.
We're dealing with human beings here. So.
Are most businesses valued as a multiple of cash flow, a multiple of EBITDA, as we call in banking, earnings before interest, taxes, amortization? Are most businesses sold off of a multiple of those things?
They are. The first thing that we try for every business is looking for a strategic partner. And in those kinds of scenarios, 2 + 2 = 6. There's another reason for a company to buy a given company other than historical cash flow.
Sure.
And then that would be the exception to what you're asking. But otherwise, yes, most of it's on multiples. And then the larger the EBITDA, the larger the cash flow, the larger the multiple typically. So.
And I'm assuming, just putting the banking hat on here for a second, that if a business is highly dependent upon an individual who's running it, owning it, theoretically that business is worth a little less than if that business is entirely functional without that owner being involved.
100%. In addition to consistent financials and consistent accounting for at least 3 years, that's the other thing that I tell business owners. If you have some lead time, 3, 4, 5 years before your business is going to sell, get the staffing in place that you're not the necessary cog. Businesses that bring the highest multiple are, both owners come in on every Thursday to sign the checks, and they're on the golf course the rest of the time. So when their business is able to run successfully without them, they're going to get a higher multiple than businesses that don't.
Sure. One of the other services that I see you guys do is buyer representation. So if I'm a buyer looking for a business, how is that relationship different than if you're representing a seller?
So buyers, and we have the advantage of having the large network, so across 48 states, and the network of businesses that are for sale. I think we have over 6,000 or 6,600, I think, today listed. So when buyers are looking for a specific thing, and especially if they're not committed to a certain geography, we can provide tremendous value, for the buyer, whatever the criteria is that they're looking for, and helping them through the process. When we're just representing the buyer too, we help them through due diligence and making sure that it makes sense. Everything with that business is the right thing for them and is a good fit.
Sure. So what's one or two things that you would give a first-time buyer some advice to? So if I'm coming out of corporate America, I'm 50 years old, and now this is my first time buying a business, what are 2 or 3 things that you would tell that buyer, hey, these are the things you really got to worry about?
The first thing would be, have you talked with your spouse about this? And are you comfortable with taking on debt? And a lot of people that are in corporate America that getting a W-2 job now are not. We've gotten a long way down the road and getting to the 5-yard line on a deal, and they get cold feet because they can't make that commitment. So that's usually the first thing that we filter out. Are you comfortable making this commitment in doing this?
Sure.
Is step one. Step two is that everybody wants a deal, right? You always want to buy something cheap. But I've seen more deals fail where somebody bought something cheap and they weren't passionate about the business. It's more important to buy something that you're passionate about and care about, and maybe more so than what the price is. Even if you have to pay a little bit more for something, but you care about it and you're passionate about that industry, is more important than price.
And I would think on that note, if you're representing the seller in most cases, but at the same time you're being service oriented and empathetic to the buyer, that you're trying to create a win-win deal for everyone involved. Is that accurate?
For sure. It's part of that creativity that I mentioned before. So it starts with listening and understanding what the needs, wants, and goals are of both sides, and how do we come up with those creative solutions to do that. And again, the value of our team. We have 23 of us, that meet weekly with all different backgrounds, and we talk about issues every week, right? So how do we solve this for buyer and seller, and how do we come up with a solution that does what they both want to do?
Sure. So with your 23 advisors you have, I know we're going to be talking with Josh Klassen here in a little bit, but what are some of the attributes you look for in an individual to bring on as a business broker with your team?
Yeah, the first thing is core values, and we've been on traction for about 3 years now. I'm a big advocate of traction, EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, that starts with identifying your core values of who you are as a company, right? So, we live and breathe by our core values. We fire and hire by the core values is step one. And then step two is the ability to listen, right? It doesn't matter what your educational background is. I'd rather have somebody that's a good listener and creative and empathetic than somebody that graduated from Harvard with a degree but can't listen.
Sure. Right.
But we have a wide area of expertise, a wide area of past CEOs and past business owners to some young folks coming out of college not long ago. So it's a really good mix.
And what are some of the business value ranges that you guys target? For example, if a business is cash flowing $200,000 and maybe there's a value of 3 to 4 times multiple, is there a certain sweet spot of value that you guys are targeting right now?
When I started this, I said, we were always industry agnostic, and I said we were doing deals $40 million and below. Most of those are $5 million and below, right? But today we have several over $100 million in size. So as we grow and mature and expand our team, the deal size is getting larger.
Sure. And are you guys planning on continuing to grow the number of advisors you have?
For sure. We have a big sandbox, with the 3 states that we're in. So a lot of businesses there, a lot of area to cover. We just signed a deal this morning for Milwaukee, so looking to add folks in the Milwaukee area for sure.
Well, fantastic. I think business brokerage, M&A advising, business advising is a fantastic industry to be in. And certainly as SCORE mentors, SCORE advisors, if we have a business opportunity that we're mentoring somebody in, we'll try to handpick out a number of advisors to talk to, but we also have a number of resources on our digital footprint that we'll have them look at in terms of how to do a business plan, how to look at projections, maybe some case studies, success studies that they can see online. And we'll look at that here in the next clip here on some of the stuff we can do on the digital format.
Every day, customers look online for businesses that seem trustworthy and reputable. Any business can say they're committed to operating with integrity, honoring promises, and telling the truth. But what does it take to actually prove it? Help potential customers make the right choice by getting an official BBB seal of accreditation that lets them know just how credible your company is. Apply for BBB accreditation today and show customers you're the business they've been looking for.
Welcome back. We are here with Josh Klassen from Transworld, a business advisor with Transworld, and one of Scott Hislop's first hires. Is that correct?
That's correct. One of the younger guys at Transworld, and also...
Was it a good hire or regrettable hire? Right?
Depends which day, right, Scott?
That's right. So, Josh, looking at your background a little bit, you went to college in Minnesota.
Yep.
You graduated college, and you decided to go into one of the harder industries out there, business brokerage and business advising. Tell me about your journey.
Well, I wish you would have told me that before I jumped into it. I didn't know it was one of the hardest businesses when I got into it. No, but I'm really blessed to had made contact with Scott early on. At the time, I was just looking at getting into real estate. I had a passion for business and looking through some of the business brokerage sites around Minnesota, I ran across Scott's that he had just started. And it was one of the most well-done websites I saw. And being a younger guy, I'm like, well, this is the guy I got to go talk to, right? So that's where we got the ball rolling. And Scott, being the salesman he is, got me on board real quick.
So knowing the industry a little bit, are you more geared personality-wise to represent the sellers, or as they say in the industry, do you have the patience to represent the buyers more?
I think both. I have a bend towards sellers, obviously, but you build relationships with sellers over time, but it's also fun to build relationships with buyers, because a lot of times our buyers can be in the younger category, which I have some, connection with, obviously. And so I can see what they're looking for through their eyes and help them navigate the process, whether it's SBA financing for a deal and some of those items.
So confidentially, give us some broad strokes on a couple of listings you may have out there that you're working on right now.
Yeah, so one of the exciting ones we just listed is a 3-location CBD and tobacco shop opportunity in the Twin Cities. Very high cash flow, very clean business, and very attractive. I know there's a lot of things changing in the industry right now, but they're well positioned. We're also working on several other manufacturing and business services businesses right now that have positive cash flow and really attract a high-quality buyer.
Sure. One of the industry stats we always hear about is how challenging it is to get to the closing table on some of these businesses. Yeah. What are both of your strategies on how to get that buyer to the closing table a little quicker than the industry?
Well, I'll go real quick, Scott, and then you can follow up. But for me, it's a lot of times the hang-up comes with, number one, you have a buyer that's interested in your business. That's great. Next step is, do they have the cash? Do they have the financial wherewithal to, get financed? So that's where we really spend a lot of time, too. Once we help them vet the business, figure out if it's something they want to move forward on, actually getting them to a bank partner that can help them, finance the deal. So.
Yeah, part of our value for sellers is always having multiple buyers at the table, and never going to the end with just a single buyer. So, talking with the buyers ahead of time, understanding their needs, wants, and goals, and making sure it's a good fit. But then, every buyer wants to take their time and take 2 years to make a decision. We don't allow that to happen.
Sure.
In the interest of the seller, right? So keeping competition at the table, making sure it's a good fit, but then let's go and get this done in a timely manner.
Okay.
So.
What are some of the industries, Josh, that you like to cater to, along with some of the valuations you like to cater to?
Yeah, I think I have a lean towards business services. I think that's one industry, whether it's HVAC, electrical contractors, roofing companies, plumbers. I think that's one industry that stays strong no matter what the economy is. And I know, Scott, you'd probably agree that's one of our higher sought after businesses by buyers. And if the business has fantastic cash flow or good cash flow that will attract a buyer, it's usually a transaction I seek after.
Sure.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenging industries that may have a strong value, may have a strong cash flow or EBITDA number, but they can be really challenging to transition people out of?
Yeah, I don't know, Scott. What would
asset-heavy businesses are a challenge. When there's a really strong asset base, and then the decision whether they should have an auction and sell the assets, or do we sell the business with the assets. So that's always a hard discussion. But the asset base is probably one of the things that makes a business difficult to sell.
Sure.
Yeah.
Josh, with your experience with Scott and business brokerage, you got to have one or two stories that just keep you up at night.
I knew you were going to throw this one at me. There's always stories that keep me up at night.
With
and
Scott or someone else?
Well, deals. Yeah. As a business broker, and my wife will attest to this, I'm laying awake at night thinking about the deal. How can we get creative? How can we create a win-win for the buyer? And we can accomplish that in most cases, but there's also deals that are a little bit of what we would call a headache, but we learn from each of those. So I don't know if I have any specific examples that we can get into here, but there are definitely those examples. But in most cases, we're able to have a successful transaction between buyer and seller, and that's that's what gets me excited.
Josh has a unique ability to talk with any type of buyer, so he can have a conversation with a 20-year-old and that casual there. And I've seen him have conversations with a billionaire in very serious boardroom type and be very comfortable there. So the same with under stress and under pressure. You know, I have a hard time telling you I know he's stressed, but in the conversation I don't witness that. So he has a unique ability there that a lot of people don't. So.
Well, I would think, Scott, as owner of a company, when you got business advisors like Josh and others, that sleeping at night gets a little bit easier for you.
It does, but you know you're always in the groove. You're always in the middle of transactions, and you know we just had one close this morning that was holding the hand of the advisor because it was on, it was off, it was on, it was off, and it's an emotional thing for everyone.
Sure. Well, we appreciate Josh coming in here and talking with us, along with Scott staying by and talking with us longer. As we come back, we'll talk with another business advisor from Transworld, Lane Brace, and he is in the automotive sector, I believe, and we'll talk about his experiences. But in the meantime, we will look at some Transworld material as we go into break.
A commonly asked question received at Transworld Business Advisors is, why do I need a business broker? Our number one goal as brokers is teaming up with sellers to maximize the value of their business. The importance of confidentiality during a sales process is another reason for using a business broker. We work with the sellers, handling the business sales process from start to finish, from confidentially marketing to buyers, negotiations, due diligence management, and closing the deal. Transworld has a proven track record in business brokerage and a broad variety of industry experience, having sold over 15,000 businesses. Transworld North Star, offices in Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin.
Welcome back. We are here with Scott Hislop and Lane Brace from Transworld, and we are speaking on the topic of how it was built. And we are talking with today Lane Brace, one of Scott Hislop's newest hires, and maybe regrettable hires, we'll find out. But Lane has a lot of industry knowledge, a lot of industry background. And Lane, how did you get hooked up with Scott and Transworld?
Well, Brett, over the course of time, especially like the last 4 or 5 years, I've always been looking at either selling my own business or possibly buying another business. And somehow, I don't recall Scott, but we exchanged emails for some time, and then got the invite from Scott one day to come up and sit down and have a conversation about going to work with Transworld. And it's just been a blast so far.
Sure. And I understand you've had a long history of owning various kinds of businesses, and you own a business right now. Is that accurate?
Sure do. I started out, I wanted to build a quick lube in Owatonna, where I'm from, and I looked at a piece of property and it was attached to a car wash. Well, I didn't have the means to buy the whole thing, so I found partners for the car wash and I bought the land and started the quick lube, and all of a sudden that's been 27 years ago already. So that's been awesome too. It's just been a lot of fun.
What kind of challenges have you had running an automotive business in southern Minnesota?
The business can be somewhat seasonal. It can be challenging at times, like everyone else, to find help these days. We do get, the one things I do really like about it, though, is the customers. Just love the customers. Mm-hmm. Not real active in it anymore, but I honestly miss that part of it, having the interaction with the customers. There's always challenges in everything you do. You find a way.
Sure,
you find a way to make it work.
And you've had that business over 20 years right now.
Yeah.
And have you looked during those years of expanding or diversifying into other things?
I have not so much. I did get bored with changing oil. So I've had other occupations over the years. And now this fits really well with Transworld right now because the business has been good.
Sure.
And I can break away and go out onto another career right now. And it's good.
Well, fantastic.
Yeah.
Scott had mentioned earlier about some of the attributes he looks for in hiring a business advisor. And Scott, what are some of those attributes that Lane may have out there?
Yeah, so empathetic listening, for sure. So a lot of sellers are really nervous when they first come to us, and Lane does a great job of putting them at ease. Maybe you sit down and have a beer together and just talk about this. And everything that we do is confidential, but it's a scary thing to tell somebody, tell a stranger or whatever, about your business and the fact that you're thinking about selling. And Lane does a great job at putting them at ease and making them comfortable.
Sure. And Lane, you're also a newly crowned SCORE mentor, correct?
Yes, I am.
How's that going for you?
Well, just getting through the orientation process right now. It all started early on when I started the Quick Lube.
Sure.
I needed help. I reached out to SCORE with getting some of my payroll things set up in QuickBooks and various things. It was just nice to have a resource to talk to, maybe help with some goals and how to achieve some of these things that you really had in mind that you wanted to accomplish. And SCORE at that time was just a great help, and I have the time now to give back a bit.
Sure.
Just rolling through the orientation process right now, and we'll get through it soon and hopefully get out and be assistants.
Well, we appreciate you being a SCORE mentor, and like a lot of other small business owners, it's great that you're giving back to the community.
Yeah.
What are some of the skills and attributes that you have as a business owner that kind of flow into your SCORE mentorship, you think?
Well, having a business is, people that have businesses of their own, they do realize it's never easy. It takes a lot of hard work. I'm just kind of old school that way, I
Sure.
guess, Sometimes we run into people now, at least in Transworld, they want to just buy a business and have it run itself, but it doesn't work that way. You do have to make sacrifices, and that a lot of times could be in your family. Hopefully you got a good supportive group at home. But just looking forward to the opportunity of giving back a little bit and
Sure.
trying to work through some of the issues that some of these entrepreneurs are having. Hopefully I can help.
Well, one of the pillars that we have at SCORE is that we have a lot of former business owners that are willing to volunteer their time, share their expertise, and then also tutor and mentor other people going into business. So we at SCORE really appreciate both your guys' dedication to it. And we will be back shortly with some more business advisors from Transworld. Welcome back. We are here with Scott Hislop's group from Transworld, and he has 3 business advisors he's going to introduce. Scott?
Yeah, thank you, Brent. 3 pillars of our company. So starting on the end, Mark Shoby used to own his own business called Business Essentials. I think Mark and I first met a number of years ago when you're looking for a business to buy after you sold your first business. But a lot of our people on our team are prior business owners and bring great experiences as a business owner and do a great job as a business broker. Bill Heiser in the middle used to be with Vickerman Corp. Bill has been with us about a year now. And so just a tremendous asset to our team. Bill's the early riser and gets to the office first thing in the morning and ahead of everyone else. So I appreciate his commitment there. And then Keith Becker, I've known for a while. He and his wife, Kelsey, have been friends of our family, my wife and I. And Keith used to work at the Starkey company. So again, a great resource as part of our team.
Sure. Keith, you have some background on real estate, is that correct?
A little bit on the real estate investing side. So,
Okay.
yep.
And you were a former military guy, right?
Current military guy.
Guy.
Still in the Navy Reserves.
Okay.
Going on almost 15 years.
So how does Scott's leadership translate into the military field?
Well, he doesn't make us all stand when he walks into the room, so that's a plus. But not yet. No, but what really drew me to Transworld Business Advisors was that Scott's style is very similar to being in the military style, where it's very service-based. The company's service-based. And that's very important to me. That's very important to what I believe in. So it's kind of a natural fit to be able to join the team.
Sure. Mark, what are some of the attributes that you bring to the team as a former business owner?
It's really when I sit down and I talk with someone that's owned a business for a long time. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I think that they identify with is someone that knows what it's like to have to make payroll on Friday.
Sure.
Right. That understands doing sales taxes, understands what it's like to lose a real key employee and be down on your luck. Right. And so that's really just a nice attribute that I think I can really identify with them having done it before.
Sure. So you guys must have some stories of a client or so that's challenging to work with or a business difficult to sell. Bill, you got to share some of those stories with us.
We have a lot of interesting situations. Scott and the entire team make all those situations so much easier because of the collaboration within the office, the ability to reach out to anyone and share what you're going through, get their feedback, their experience, and help put that towards what's best for your client. So whether it's a buy side or a sell side, it's the expertise in the office that really separates Transworld from other brokers. Because we're drawing from the pool of 25 very accomplished professionals.
Sure. Scott, you and your group, we've been talking the last 40 minutes or so about Transworld and some of the other advisors you have. What are some of the things besides the expertise level that separates you guys from the other business advising firms in Minnesota for sure?
Yeah, we talked about creativity a little bit in the prior hour, but I think that's it, right? So when any business at face value, when you're selling a business, any buyer at face value, the two are not a perfect match. It's understanding the needs, wants, and goals of both sides, and how do we work together collectively and use our creative juices to come up with a solution that's good for both. And I think we're better at that than anyone else.
How do you, as a group, counter the argument of, I'm just going to sell my business myself? I don't want to pay a fee. I don't want to have someone else service it. I know it. What is your rebuttal on that argument?
I tell everyone that I meet with, and I encourage the rest of our team, I don't care whether you use us or not, but use somebody. Because if you don't, you're leaving dollars on the table. It doesn't matter what size business you have. Typically, in a larger company, if it's worth 10 or 20 million, a private equity company might come and offer you 30 or 40 at face value. But when you get through due diligence, they're not careful with confidentiality. Other things show up. There's warts on the business that show up, and by the time they get to the closing table, the owner is so vested in that process they can't turn around. And then they say, "Oh, by the way, we're going to pay you $5 million, not $40 million that we offered." So, that's exaggeration, but that type of thing happens time and time again. So, we want the owners to stay focused on the business. We want them to stay focused on the revenue, continue to grow revenue, continue to increase KPIs of the business, and let us do the heavy lifting of the sale process.
Mark, we'll start with you. What are one or two industries that you specialize in as a business advisor?
I've done a wide assortment of all sorts of different things, whether it be retail type of sales, whether it be had some very nice RV sales here recently. And I think that's, part of what we bring to the table is other business brokerage may focus on one or two different industries, but we're somewhat generalists, and the power of the whole group can really bring that together.
Sure. What are your desired industries, Bill, if you have any?
Well, with my background, I've been servicing small businesses for over 30 years in some capacity. So really what drew me to business brokerage was the ability to work with folks like that each and every day on helping them solve problems and attain that goal of exit and a no regrets exit. So industry agnostic, I like to say, but certainly like manufacturing, e-commerce, and distribution.
Sure. And finally?
I would say industry agnostic, but I love people that have a story, right? It's one of the most compelling things I think about our jobs is that we get to learn people's stories, especially through COVID. Everybody has a COVID story as a business owner. So I'm intrinsically drawn to compelling stories when I'm meeting with business owners.
Well, fantastic. I can tell you from experience with the people that I've mentored, we get a lot of calls on, hey, I'm buying a business, or I'm looking at this business. What do I need to do? And certainly the people here at Transworld give you very insightful knowledge of that industry and how to go about it. Very reputable company inside the country, inside Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin. And so we're fortunate to have Scott and his team here, and we thank you very much.